Toitu te marae a tane mahuta. Toitu te marae a tangaroa. Toitu te tangata.
This Maori proverb reminds us how we should look after our land and sea to be successful in achieving our future vision on food systems. The 12 Sustainable Development Goals implemented by the United Nations focuses on responsible consumption and production. Each year, an estimated one-third of all food produced, equivalent to 1.3 billion tons, and worth around $1 trillion, ends up rotting in the bins of consumers and retailers, or spoiling due to poor transportation and harvesting practices. To understand the waste problem better, we interviewed Chris Inslee and Aroha Dorset from the Arawa fisheries with how we can reduce the amount of unnecessary waste produced from the fishing industry.
But I think the first thing to make is that in the not too distant past, most of it was just seen as waste, and it was a byproduct that was a problem for the industry to try and think about how to get rid of it. So much of it was largely, if not dumped. And then in the last few years, it started. It was being made into pet food or fertilizers and dumped on the land as a fertilizer. Fish meal. It's being used for fish meal. And also, but there is still a bunch of it that is produced, which is what we're trying to get access to, that is still a problem for the industry to get rid of.
New Zealand is a small island nation surrounded by the Pacific Ocean. The fishing industry is one of New Zealand's largest export markets, so the way we handle and control the fishing sector has a significant impact on our nation. We only utilize a small portion of the fish, while the remaining parts are thrown out. A lot of these parts are very nutritious and should in fact be utilized as a useful product. So this begs the question, how do we reduce the amount of fish wastage and therefore make our fishing exports and imports more sustainable?
The main challenges facing the fishing industry at the moment is social license or sustainability. So how do we sustainably fish but still look after our ocean at the same time? So I would say that is the biggest issue right now. So how do we change that? How do we fix that? Well, I think one of the main things we need to do is move from being a volume business to being a value business. Take a bit of pressure off that wild stock, and instead of just fishing and selling a fish, let's look at how we fish in some ways and get as much value as possible out of that fish. I think the other thing is that we need to look at something like aquaculture, so that we're not fishing from wild stocks and we're actually creating more protein without putting extra strain on the ocean.
For this project, we were privileged enough to be guided by Ari Hayati, who is a current PhD student at the University of Otago. She took us through the process of using the fish skeletal frame to produce an alternative food product such as fish crackers. It was interesting to see that certain components of the fish that are deemed to be useless to consume as a fillet, such as the skeletal frame of the fish or the head, were able to be transformed into a nutritious alternative food product. The fish paste that was made from the fish skeletal frame was then mixed with a combination of flour, garlic, and salt, which made it in a dough. By using these additional ingredients, we were able to enhance the flavor of the fish waste into something more appealing to the consumer. The dough was then frozen and sliced into cracker-like shapes. Not only this is a great way to eliminate the hint of unappealing parts of the fish, but it's also a great way to get your calcium and protein intake. This is the final product after frying. The nutritional composition of the fish crackers, such as the total fat, protein, and carbohydrate content, had to be determined. This is important within the food processing step because it allows the consumers to understand the effect of consuming this food product. In order to determine the composition, we use the Cadle method, which tests the total protein composition within the crackers. A titration was conducted in order to calculate the total nitrogen content. Studies show that approximately 1 in 4 families in New Zealand are malnourished and food insecure. By taking advantage of these unused fish components, not only we will be able to ensure there is less food wasted per fish, but this also ensures that there are more families in New Zealand will be able to access more nutritious food items such as the fish crackers, which is high in calcium and protein. In order for our society to continue to compensate for the rapidly growing population, we need to be able to utilize every part of the food product we produce. And this can only be done if each and every one of us does a little part. Your contribution and my contribution will result in our success to achieve our sustainability goals as described by the Maori proverb.
Nau te roro, naku te roro, ka ora te manuhiri.